Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech, episode 79. I am Andrew Zarian. I am the Zarian. Joined by Paul Thurrott.
Sorry to laugh.
It's a Thursday. The Zarian.
I should just accept that description.
Just accept it. Well, you were the man, the myth, the legend last week, and I got a couple emails about it saying you were very humble about the title.
Right.
I think you should just go with it.
Okay.
Just I am. Accept it.
I just am. Just deal with it.
Paul and I will be covering tech stuff for the next hour. He's been joining me for the last couple of weeks. Today's a Thursday. We were supposed to do it on Tuesday, but Paul was away at camp.
Really away.
Really away. It was camp, right?
Yeah, it was camp.
How
they
long
had
were
zip lines at this camp. You know, people would go flying by the windows.
Did you do
screaming. No, I didn't have a chance. My class went yesterday, but that was the day I went home. So
that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I don't know. Camp always scared me as a child.
Oh, this one would have scared the hell out of you. It was pitch black at night. You know, it's in the middle of nowhere. The bugs, the volume of the bugs was off the charts. And I kept waiting for some hockey mask wearing guy with a knife to jump up behind a tree or something. It was crazy.
You sent me an email, and you know we were going to do this on Tuesday afternoon, and you sent me an email saying, "Hey, listen, I'm so sorry. There's no internet access here. There's nothing."
Well, they have internet access, but the way it works is they don't let you hog the bandwidth, and they actually the longer you're attached to the network, the slower it gets. And it was so, like in my in the cabin where I would have had to have done this. I couldn't even download an audio podcast. It was just so lousy.
So what were they doing? They were throttling it. Like you could have the bandwidth for a minute, and then they would they would throttle it beyond that. Wow, it
was just bad, you know. So there was just no way to do it.
Do you know what kind of connection it was?
Oh no, I have no idea.
No clue.
I mean, I apparently when this place started, when they started using this place, they didn't have any cell connection at all or Wi-Fi, but people were freaking out. So they added it over time, but.
We were at Blog World this year in New York City, and the great folks over there gave us our own T3 line.
Wow.
And we were the only ones using it because it was so bizarre how it was set up. We were all the way in the back. We had a great spot. I mean, it was huge. We could have taken the entire back of the floor and just gone huge. But they had the line coming in, and they said, well, you might have to share this with 2 or 3 people. Mm-hmm. And everybody else was using, the Javits Center, whatever, Wi-Fi, whatever they're using.
Yeah.
And I noticed, I'm like, oh my God, we're the only ones with this T3 line. So we kind of hid we hid the wire, and we were doing all this so nobody finds out. People found out by the second day. We got there about an hour late, and people are running lines coming out of the router. So I just started disconnecting all the lines. It was a whole thing. Bandwidth is scarce when you're at these events, I guess. And
well,
it's scary to say
I mean, tech
that.
events are worse because obviously everyone there has multiple devices and they have all this stuff going on.
I mean, isn't that scary though? Considering people are prepared for this, right? Everybody's going to be wired and everybody's going to be connected.
No, but there's a bandwidth limitation. Not on wired connections, but when you go to a tech show, whatever it is, Microsoft, Apple, that. You can have as dense a collection of wireless access points as you want, but they saturate to a point and they get in the way of each other. There's actually no way to overcome it with the current technology. You just hit a point where it just doesn't work anymore. Yeah,
no, I guess you're right with that. Last week we were discussing the Roku on the show, and had you received it last week when we?
No, I think it either arrived right after we finished or. The next day. It was very soon thereafter.
Yeah, I ordered it that day, and I didn't confirm it properly with my PayPal, so it didn't go through.
Okay.
So I had to reorder it. I believe it was Thursday I reordered it, and I got it yesterday.
Yeah, it's quick.
First of all, I was so surprised how tiny this thing is.
I know.
I mean, it's... I couldn't believe it.
Have you seen an Apple TV?
I have, but
new ones?
No, I've seen the older one.
Same thing, right? Same hockey puck looking.
Yeah, but I kind of pictured it to be a little bit bigger.
Yeah, no, it's teeny.
I did a really naive thing, and it's something my father would do. You know the little tab on the side? Yep. I spent about 5 minutes trying to pull it. Thinking
because this will unleash some
functionality. You know how like they have the battery on some of these cheap devices you buy the 99 cents, or you pull the tab and a battery connects. Like I'm thinking I gotta pull that, or for whatever reason I was thinking that was a tab for the SD card. but it doesn't have an
I'm
SD
used to this
card.
because they started doing this last year with their products. The remote last year had that same tab on it, and it's just it's like the way they do their brand.
It was weird, right? I mean, that's a little weird.
Yep.
For people who don't know, Paul did a amazing blog on his website at winsupersite.com, a very thorough review of the Roku 2, and you went through all the models, and you went through the specific functions of each one and why one is better than the other one. I got the XS, which is the highest one.
I did too.
I believe you have the same one too.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into what I love, because the device is unbelievable. It's so unbelievable. I've spent maybe about 15 minutes with the thing. My wife has spent all the time with it. I put it in my living room. Unfortunately, I wish I didn't. And now she's watching Glee all day and night. So I hooked it up, and it was a lot easier than the Google TV. You don't have to deal with
night and day.
Night and day. The only bizarre thing that I experienced was I did the update. I did the initial update. I set up the TV, whatever it was, and it went to do a server update, or it tried to connect to the server, and it kept telling me I have no internet access. I redid the internet password. I even connected to 3 different connections that we have in the house. All of them did the same thing. Unplugged it, plugged it back in about 4 times, and finally it worked.
Did you do it over? Was it wired or wireless?
It's wireless.
You never tried the wire?
No, I mean I could. That was going to be my next thing if it didn't, after my 5th attempt. But wireless, it was doing some weird thing, and I Googled it, and people said they've experienced this problem with the original Roku, and just to constantly reset, and once it catches it, you're good.
Okay, so I didn't experience that. I mean, the only thing I would say is, like any modern electronic device, unfortunately, you go through some hoops, to sign into the thing, and there's a software update, even though the thing just came out. You have to install that, but once you get it up and running, it's really fast and it works great. And I didn't have to do it multiple times at least. So
yeah, so I got all the channels. Another thing I experienced, and I don't know, did you set your TV at 1080p or is it 720p?
1080. Yeah.
Okay, I'm having a problem. I have a 1080p TV. If the recording, so let's say Revision 3. And if I go to Revision 3 and I try to watch one of their shows in 1080p, it doesn't fit the screen. It gives me like a bar on the top and bottom, and even on the sides a little bit. So I had to go back to 720p, and it fits perfectly.
Just to get the fit. That's
just to get the fit. It's not like that with Hulu or Netflix. Yeah. It's just the web TV
what
shows.
How are you connecting it?
Wi-Fi.
Is it HDMI?
Yeah, but it's weird. It is HDMI. It is HDMI. The audio's I connected the audio separate through a distribution amp, so the audio's going through the AV.
Yep.
But I don't know if it's just something with my TV, because it's one of the first 1080p TVs.
I'm not even sure how I'd notice that. Well, I mean, Netflix is full screen, but it would be, I guess, regardless.
Okay. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe I was thinking.
I'll look at it. So you're saying the Revision 3 video podcasts are 1080p,
and I believe Twit did the same thing.
Okay, I'll look. I don't know that I would have noticed that, because a lot of you watch movies on there, whatever the service is. There's always going to be some black bar.
Yeah.
On the top and bottom, at least.
Yeah, I mean, 720p fits. I mean, perfectly.
Yep.
So, another thing that I like is certain networks have a live function, which is really interesting, and I haven't really seen a device do this. I know with Google you could do it, because Google is, you have the browser there, but and it has Flash support, but these actually are live streaming networks, and I'm curious to know why other networks have not utilized this. And
so I don't actually know, but I would guess that they would have to support Roku specifically. I know they have a programming kit, and a device, some kind of a scripting language and so forth. And now with the new one, they even have a game development kit as well. So maybe they just need to specifically support the Roku.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see. I know Fox is doing it, and something else. I forgot what it was, but I'm curious to see why CBS and not CBS necessarily, but CNN especially is not utilizing.
Well, it turns it into a TV.
Yeah, and then now you're competing with the cable networks, and that's not good for them.
It's awesome.
So you love yours, huh? You're
I
really
love it. Well, the big thing for me is the captioning, subtitling. Netflix has supported that for a while, but it's only on certain devices. And the devices I have in my living room, like the Xbox 360, the old Roku and the Apple TV do not support that. But now this device does. And some other devices do. You can get captioning through the web browser interface on the PC or a Mac. I think the PlayStation may support it, the PlayStation 3. But now this device does. And this is big for my son because my son is deaf. And as far as he's concerned, Netflix didn't exist before. Okay. But now all of a sudden there's this new thing that he can watch, and there's a lot of content there. So that's nice. Okay,
so Roku's supporting that, and previously you couldn't get it. Does the Xbox work with it or no?
No, but of course they could upgrade it to support it. It just hasn't happened yet. Yeah.
Would that be a major update for them, or it's a very simple thing for them to implement?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's just something that will happen over time. I can't believe it hasn't happened yet, but we'll see. I mean, the story about it, 6 months ago was that they were going to upgrade the existing Roku devices to support it, and that now, of course, they've come up with the new ones. So I'm guessing that's probably not what's going to happen, but. I'm just happy to have something that is in there that works and is really simple that he can actually use. So it's nice.
Are you using Hulu Plus with it as well?
I don't use Hulu Plus anymore.
At all?
We use Amazon.
Done? I don't know. Sorry. See, I can't. I haven't been able to. I liked Amazon when they first came out because they're giving it away to Prime members, which is great. But I feel that its
selection is terrible.
It's missing so much that Hulu has, especially with the television programming.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, but so Amazon's free. So there's that. Amazon has rental movies like Apple does on Apple TV. So there's that. Same pricing, Because I'm an Amazon customer and I do so much through Amazon, every once in a while you do something like you'll buy some video game and you'll get an email that says, because you purchased this video game, you now have a $10 or $5 or $20 credit. Next time you buy a video game, this will be applied. And I have all these credits somehow in the video part of Amazon, so that we actually rented over the past week, I think 3 movies, none of which we paid for.
Okay.
And they normally would have been $5 each, because I had this credit built up somewhere in Amazon. So in that sense, aside from the streaming thing, which has a long way to go to catch up to Netflix, Amazon is a nice viable replacement for Apple TV or for Apple's iTunes stuff, in the sense that they offer the TV shows and the movies. And then it goes one step further, because when you buy anything from Amazon, it's available forever going forward for streaming purposes, which of course you can do through the Roku as well.
That's interesting how I just feel that none of them are doing it properly still.
Doing what?
Just the environment, the UI.
Yeah.
I feel that they're all missing something, and the reason why my wife's I can't switch. My wife's grandparents were over. When we got the device, and while I was hooking it up and I was going through it, and I told them, I said, can you do this? I mean, you try doing it. And they had a difficult time with the username and password concept. They couldn't understand that. They didn't understand why they need to put that in. And her grandfather said something interesting. He said, well, if I buy the device, can't I just get them to set everything up with my account?
Well, okay, so I was going to ask you this. What do you think is worse? Like, what's worse? You have all these services attached to the box. So there are 2 ways you can sort of authenticate with them. Well, actually, I guess there's 3, but right now there's 2. One is using the remote control. You manually type in a lengthy username and password, hope that you got it right, hit enter, and it connects to the service, and you're good to go. Okay. The other way is it will put up a URL on the screen that will say, now go over to your PC web browser.
Yeah.
And go to this URL, like netflix.com/Roku or whatever it is. And then you do that, and and there's a code or something that you have to type in. So either one of these is sort of ponderous, right? They're not very streamlined. But I guess the third way, which is I think what was your father-in-law was asking for?
My wife's grandfather.
Okay, I'm not sure what the grandfather-in-law
it's like would be like my father-in-law.
Yeah, would be a central, like in other words, Roku. You would go to the Roku website and say, here are my login credentials for Netflix, Amazon, whatever. And
you do it once, and it's always, that's it, you're done.
The problem is, for a lot of people, they're only going to do it once anyway. I mean, I've bought every Roku, box that's come down the pike over the past 4 or 5 years. So I've had to do this stuff multiple times. But I think most people would buy this thing and just do it the one time anyway. So, I'm not that eventually they wouldn't have to replace it, but it's one time in several years maybe.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I know it. I do find it annoying typing in these username password things over and over again. You know?
And that was the benefit of Google TV because it's a keyboard. It's easier to type. You could.
I did have this moment where I thought, I wonder what would happen if I plugged in a keyboard to that USB port. Would that work? Because that would be really nice.
Did you try it? Did you try it?
Just to sit there and log into every service, right?
Now, what is that USB port for exactly? What can I do with that?
You can plug in a USB memory card, like a memory key or a hard drive.
Okay.
And it will look for photo content, music content, or movie content, and then play it back. And it's funny. A lot of these devices for a long time did not support NTFS, which is what I format all my hard drives in, and that worked. And I have really big collections of movies and music, particularly. So the navigation isn't particularly fast, but it does work. And that's one way to do it. What I wish was built in was a nice network browser, so I could have it hit my Windows Home server, and everything would just be in that one place, or my PC, or wherever I might have content. But right now, you have at least you can do it with a USB hard drive. It's pretty good.
I don't know. I like it. I think it's a great device. I'm just still, and I've said this each time you've been on, and each time I do a show, I just feel that if they made the UI for these devices a little bit friendlier for the masses, they would be able to do it. I don't know how they could do it because it's a complicated thing, right? It's not like cable TV, but you kind of have to make it like cable TV for everybody to accept it.
We'll have to see what happens when Microsoft updates the Xbox 360 UI this year, because I think that's going to be pretty close to what you're asking for. A really nice, user-friendly, consumer-y kind of UI. And they do a good job with the TV-like experiences, Media Center and Media Room and all that. So I think they have a good chance of getting that right. But the Roku UI is pretty good. And, of course, each service has its own UI when you get into them. Netflix on Roku looks a lot like Netflix on most other boxes. It's okay, it's fine. It's better than the Amazon UI.
Oh yeah.
So
much better. You brought up Microsoft, and I want to talk to you about this. And we spoke about it a little bit today, early on when we were exchanging emails.
Yep.
It seems like this week.
It's not just this week, but yeah.
I noticed a lot more this week, and it was strange. I've seen some websites say this over the last couple months, but this week, for whatever reason, Engadget, Gizmodo, and a lot of the more cynical sites have started
like saying, this is the one.
This is it. And the actual title was, "Is this the end for Android? Is Windows Phone 7 going to blow Android out of the water or something like that?" And I thought, the interesting thing is we're not even talking about the iPhone anymore, right? It's not an iPhone killer anymore.
I don't understand that.
We're saying that this phone that every blogger, not every, but many bloggers have trashed and said, "Oh, Microsoft can't do a phone. Oh, nobody's going to like this UI." The same people are now turning around and saying, "Is this the one?"
So when I started noticing, I don't remember the date, but there was some point in July where we were allowed to start talking about Mango and this release candidate build that we had gotten. And not Walter Mossberg, but his little chameleon there, Katie Boer, or whatever her name is, wrote a review of it and was very positive, very nice, and said, "Wow, they made all these changes and now they got it right. They finally got it right.
Finally, yeah.
Last year it was a piece of garbage, but this year they got it right." To which I would say, you were not paying attention last year then, because this thing that you love so much is exactly like the phone we had last year. It really is not that giant of a jump. They've taken all of the good ideas from the last one and they've just made little evolutionary changes all over the place. And it looked that you could put them side by side. They look exactly the same.
I mean, I saw the UI when a couple of weeks ago, and it's the same, but they've added Twitter integration and
but it's
Facebook
the same,
integration.
That's what I mean. It's the same thing. In other words, take the good stuff you had, Facebook, and then improve it. So you have better Facebook integration. You got Twitter. You've got LinkedIn if that's what you want. The email account and calendar and all that stuff basically is just the same. Everything got a little spit shine. The photos thing is a little more dynamic. The Games Hub is a little nicer looking. It looks more like the Xbox 360.
Yeah.
There's a 3D version of your avatar instead of a 2D version. None of this is dramatic. I mean,
no, not big at all.
None of it. So it's all welcome. Don't get me wrong, and it all adds up to this is in fact a better product than the original one, and everyone's getting it for free, which is fantastic. But again, if you put a V1 phone next to the Mango phone, they look. I'm sorry, but this is the same exact user interface. Why are you blown away by this year? And I don't mean there's no concentrated effort on the part of these people. They're not, combining together into some kind of weird cabal or something. But it is odd. I saw this in many different places. First from the mainstream press, and now you're talking about like the tech blogs doing the same thing. I find it very strange because a year ago, I looked at this thing and I said, "This is great. It's great right now, and it's only going to get better, but it's great right now." And that these other people sort of said, "Oh, this is garbage. Microsoft doesn't get it." A year ago, and then looked at this thing, which is so very clearly the next version of that other thing, and now all of a sudden they got it right.
Well,
I just find that bizarre.
To me, that means either A, they didn't give it a chance at all when they first experienced the phone, which that's probably what it is, or B, they're just all full of it and they have no idea what they're talking about. I think it's a combination of both.
Actually, you've made two good points there. So.
I think it's just a giant combination of both, because when I first experienced the phone, I said, "Wow, this is a great phone." The only thing really that would damage this in a way where it can't recover and would be like a pre-type device is if the App Store in the marketplace is not developed properly. Yeah. Now, the App Store in the marketplace it hasn't grown to the level of Android and to the level of the iPhone.
I'd argue it doesn't have to. Well,
I think
there was
right.
a hypergrowth in the iPhone especially, and then in Android too, that occurred because there simply wasn't anything else. That everyone threw their weight behind this. Everyone simultaneously saw this as the huge next opportunity.
Well, also because integration is such a vital part of this phone, right? With Windows Phone 7, integration is really the key. Everything has this very similar UI. With Facebook, you don't have to go to a Facebook app. You don't have to go to a Twitter app. It's there for you. So I think that might have been Microsoft's way at combating apps.
There is definitely less of a need for apps. I mean, I don't know what well, actually, I know you've had some issues with your phone, but
with Android.
Well, just with phones in general.
Oh yeah.
But
by the way, my HTC Touch Pro still sitting here.
That's wow. Okay, so you don't use many apps, is what I'm hearing.
I do. You know what? I do use apps on my iPad. I use apps.
Okay.
Because I play a lot. You know what I use, and I'll tell you, I have God knows how many apps on this thing. I mean, I download everything. So I use regularly is Flipboard, and I use the iTunes Store for podcasts, and I use Words with Friends. That's all I'm using now.
What was the last one?
Words with Friends.
What's that?
It's like a Scrabble type game.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, so Flipboard is like the RSS reader, news, etc.
But I like downloading them. I play the game for a couple of weeks, and I forget about the game, and I throw it away. Yeah.
I was an almost compulsive iPhone, iPod Touch, and then iPad game and application downloader at first. Same thing with Windows Phone. The thing comes out the gate, and in the beginning, you kind of grab everything, and you look at the charts and see what the most popular ones are, and you sort of think about getting those and then getting many of them. And lately, what I've found is that I don't spend a lot of time in these things, So I stopped doing a lot of that stuff. I mean, I have some sort of core apps that I use on whatever the platform is. I tend to use the iPhone purely as I'm sorry, I don't use the iPhone at all. I tend to use the iPad purely as like a video player, when I'm on a trip. And that's about it. Although, someday maybe the newspaper I read will be available through the Kindle on the iPad, and maybe I start reading the paper through that thing. We'll see. I mean, but...
I scream about the apps, but the reality is you don't really need the apps. I think people just like having the option for the apps.
Yes.
I don't download anything on my Android because I think the apps are garbage.
Well, yeah. I mean, the Android, Android has some issues there. Absolutely. I mean, even Amazon, Amazon puts up a free app every single day, and I always go look at it. And I would say at least 75% of the time, it's like, what?
Yeah.
Like those apps, they're so lousy. It's like, oh, it's a barbecue app. Like, oh, I need a barbecue app.
How closed is, and I'm sure I've asked you this, but I don't remember what the answer is. How close is the Windows Phone marketplace compared to...
close?
Like development-wise, like compared to the Android marketplace and the iOS store? Because Apple's
as far
pretty...
as how hard it is to get an app published and so forth.
Yeah.
So it is curated like the Apple Store. Their OK process takes a lot less time. Absolutely. I would say that Apple is the strictest. They're at one end of the scale, and then Google's own Android market is the least strict and is on the other far end. They'll basically put anything up there. Amazon.com's Android store and Microsoft's. Actually, Amazon's gotten some complaints lately too, so it's hard to say. But I would say that Amazon and Microsoft both are not as strict as Apple, but are closer to that model because they tend to look more closely at what goes in there to try to guarantee some level of quality. That said, I mean, you can look at, like I said, on the Amazon store, absolutely, there's junk in there. And then, the Microsoft store for Windows Phone, which doesn't have nearly as many apps, still has some unbelievably poor-looking apps in there. So this is true of all these things, unfortunately. It's all hit or miss.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is Apple has kind of become the go-to phone for apps. I mean, that's because they're able to generate more revenue.
But this is a complex topic, and this is something I've been thinking about lately. I won't be able to say this very clearly, and maybe someday I'll write about it.
Sure, I don't say anything clearly, so go ahead.
Well, I mean, in other words, you've reminded me of something that's kind of been gnawing at the back of my brain. I think this came up in Freakonomics. There's this issue when you have too many choices that ultimately what it turns into is you don't have a choice. So for the if I'm right, if it wasn't Freakonomics, I believe the example had to do with a supermarket. You ran out of salad dressing. You want to buy salad dressing, and you want a particular kind of salad dressing, like Italian salad dressing. So you go in there, and there are 1,000 kinds of salad dressings in there, 300 of which are some form of Italian. Okay. And you're so overwhelmed by this many choices that you cannot make a choice.
Yeah.
That you literally will just either buy nothing, or you will buy the exact same thing that you had before without thinking at all about anything else because it's too overwhelming, right? It's sort of the opposite of what it's supposed to be. In other words, when there's more of something, it's supposed to always be better, right? But in this case, it's not. And so when you go to a place like Whole Foods or some kind of local market, you may only have 2 or 3 choices, but in many cases, that kind of thing is actually better because it's something you can digest and you can actually make an intelligent choice because there aren't as many choices. So obviously, if you think about this with the App Store markets, one of the problems with the iTunes Store, the App Store, is there's too many choices. And if you navigate that store on the iPad or the iPhone, it's impossible to even see all of them. And they do a pretty lousy job of showcasing what's there. And so you're in many ways making kind of uneducated choices because it's not clear what is available, And so it's kind of a problem. So I know it's, Apple can say we have X number of apps. It's more. It looks like it's better. But I'm not actually sure that's an advantage. I think at some point you have enough.
Well, it's the same thing with the stats that we're hearing about Android, right? It seems like they've had 50% of the market share since they came out. I've been hearing Android grabs 50% share of the market. Android grabs this, Android grabs that. But in reality, what kind of quality phones are they putting out? And really, if you were comparing one phone to one phone, would that be a fair assessment of what the market share is?
Buying a phone, this is where Android I think does fall flat because there's a new best ever Android phone almost every week now. Yeah. And as a consumer, obviously when you're making the purchase, I'm gonna buy this expensive thing. I want to get the best one. Depending on who you talk to, you may or may not find out that 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month from now, there's going to be a way better phone than the one you're about to buy. They may not care to tell you that, so you may be making a bad decision either way. I mean, I'm not saying that it's maybe I am saying this. In some ways, because Apple has a very measured release schedule, which now they're stretching out a little bit, which I think history will prove would be the right decision.
You think with the releases, they're in what way?
The hardware releases, because smartphones are computers, right? You can improve the ability of these phones through software. So why not? I mean, Apple's very regular about the software. Just by moving this date back 3-4 months, whatever it's going to work out to be, they just sold 20 million iPhones in the last quarter, a quarter in which they should not have been selling iPhone 4s anymore. Yeah. And what does this tell us? It tells us that there's still a market for these things.
There's a huge market for it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to see what phones on Verizon. What's the best Android phone on Verizon right now?
It's probably going to be like a Thunderbolt 4G something for 2 weeks, and then it will be something else.
Well, what they did was it was actually smart. They re-released a lot of the same phones.
Yeah, but with
4G.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Let me go to smartphone category. Okay, there's a smartphone category and there's a Droid category.
Okay.
I'm gonna go by. I don't even understand. Highest price. So that's pretty much how I measure everything. The Droid Charge other than the iPhone, is the most expensive one at $299. Then the Thunderbolt, then the iPhone, then the iPhone, then the iPhone, then the Droid 3, then the Revolution. See, I don't know. The Droid's okay. I can follow. Like, I don't know what the LG Revolution is.
Me neither. And I don't know why companies other than Motorola are allowed to have things called Droid.
No, they're not called Droid. That's the thing.
Oh, they're not.
No, that one is not. Only, I believe, HTC and Motorola are called Droids.
Okay.
But I don't know. You know,
this to me
tough.
is it's not quite as bad as buying a bootleg DVD on the streets of New York City where it was a guy in a movie theater with a camera, but you just never know what you're getting here. And I really feel like this is going to come back to bite them.
No, I agree with you 100%. And a viewer actually sent me an email because we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "Do you see the same thing that happened to BlackBerry happening to Android in a sense where nobody knows what device to buy?"
Right. Right.
Because there's so many of the same type of devices being released at the same time, where you're getting confused with the purchasing.
Yeah, it's worse. If anything, it's worse with Android. Absolutely.
I wish they would. You know what they would do? They would just say, okay, every phone now has whatever. You can pick whatever it is, but don't put all this UI.
The genie's
crap
out of the bottle with Android, right?
Well, they're putting all those UI stuff on there, and a great phone could become a junk phone. So you can't even compare stats. Like you could say, well, this is a dual-core 1 gigahertz Snapdragon processor in the LG and in the Motorola, but the LG is just loading it with such junk software.
I can't recall. It might have been you who had some experience with this. You buy certain phones on Verizon, if I'm not mistaken. They have apps you cannot uninstall.
Yeah, they do. They have that on the Thunderbolt, and they have that on, unless if it's a Google phone.
I'm sorry, but that's ridiculous. Yeah. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, the Google phones, you could remove the stuff. One of my hosts here on the network just bought a Thunderbolt, and he can't remove just simple stuff like, I believe it's like a video to some trailer. He can't remove that. It was something. I'm not
move it. Seriously, like a movie file.
I'm not. Don't quote me on it, but it was something very similar to it. It was like an app that played a movie, or it was like an app for a movie that came with the phone. You cannot remove it, and some of these phones now you can't even root. Because they put a block on. I think some of the Motorola's you can't root anymore.
Which is the exact opposite of the point of Android when you think about it. I mean, I think for more technical people, you accept the kind of Wild West nature of the Android market because, the advantages on the other side are sort of what you're looking for. The ability to root it and do whatever you want with it. But you're also, it's funny how this thing is basically mirroring what happened with Windows Mobile, albeit with many, many, many more sales, in that all these different phone types, different UIs, different resolutions. It makes it impossible for app developers to write an app that's going to work effectively across all of those phones. Yeah. It's a mess. And I don't. It's funny. My wife had that first Droid phone like the one you had, I believe. And when hers died and it was out of warranty, I talked to her about getting an iPhone because I felt, her as a woman, frankly, that the iPhone would be a good choice, but wouldn't take that as you will. And that she asked me, we talked about Windows Phone, which this was pre-Mango, and I just wasn't sure. I mean, there was only that one phone on Verizon, which I hadn't seen at the time. And she ended up buying another Android device, and she's okay with that, I guess. So maybe, I don't know, some of them are fine. I mean, she seems to use it okay, but
Jess has come up with the great plan that she wants to save some money on her phone bill. So she's thinking about going to Metro PCS. And they don't have any phones there. They have some weird brand. I forgot the brand, but it's all Android phones, and they're all outdated Android
They're all
phones.
the old, really old-fashioned ones with the smaller screens.
And it's weird. Like, they'll have a 1 gigahertz processor, but it's running 2.2. It doesn't have what the top OS.
That may not matter to some people.
No, but to her, I think it will.
The problem's going to be when, like, a Facebook app comes out or something really mainstream, and it says you must have whatever some spec is that's missing on her phone, and then she can't actually use that thing, and that's when it's
the one thing she needs. She's not going to be able to use.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're doing it. I
look at this thing and I just, like I said, it's like the streets of New York. Like I said, it just seems like you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And you could show me the movie and it's picture perfect and all that, and I'm like, this doesn't seem right to me.
it's so scary where it's going. I really hope, and it's weird, right? Because this is open source. This is the point of it. Anybody could install it. This is what everybody wants. The tech enthusiast wants open source to an extent, and they want to be able to customize. And it's kind of, and I'm all for that, but I'm kind of saying, hey, guys, some control is good. Pull back a little bit.
Yeah.
It's
not just good, it's necessary. And that's the lesson Microsoft learned with Windows Mobile. They saw what happened when you didn't have a certain level of control over your own platform.
Yeah.
So that's why they brought some stuff back in, and they for Windows Phone.
Yeah. We could talk about this for hours.
I know,
because I think we're it's strange to find two people with such similar opinions on all of this. And listen, I'm an Android user. I'm going to stick with Android for my phone. I don't think I'm going to go to another platform because I have an iPod Touch, so I have the iOS environment and I do have the experience of it. But I have to have Android so I could comment on it. I'm trying to convince Jess.
Yeah, no, I have an Android as well for that same reason. But I don't know.
I'm trying to convince Jess to get the Paul phone, as she calls it.
The Paul phone?
Yeah, because she actually liked the way it was, and you didn't have to deal with a lot of the...
I would just recommend, because of where we are from a schedule standpoint, I'd wait for the Nokia stuff, wait for the Mango stuff, and just see what it looks like.
We have till November till our contract expires. I'm not going to get an iPhone because I already...
Well, don't say that because... by November, some iPhone 5, whatever they call it, will come out, and you never know. It could completely blow you away.
Yeah, you're right.
I wouldn't discount it.
I want to move on to tablets.
Okay.
And I'm not going to talk about specific tablets, but I'm going to talk about the tablet market and the way they're selling these things. HP's touchpad, which is WebOS, and which is something that people wanted when WebOS was released. When Palm released WebOS, I said, wow, this would be great on a tablet device. They released it at $499. Now they've slashed $100 off of it, so it's $399 now for this device.
Really?
In my opinion, and you tell me if you agree with me or not, I don't think there is a tablet market for $499. And I'm not going to count the iPad. Okay. Yeah, I'm not counting the iPad. Currently, I don't think there is a tablet market. I don't think it'll survive at the way it's going because it's way too expensive for something that shouldn't be that expensive.
I agree with that fully. In fact, one of the big complaints I had about the iPad when it first came out was how expensive it was. Inexpensive for Apple, right, because they tend to price things very much in the high end, but expensive for what it was. And as these competitors started showing up, all with exactly the same pricing as Apple, people would write me emails and say, "Oh, you're such a jerk. You said that Apple was so expensive, and now these other things are coming out and they're the same price." But I think the reason that happened was simply that Apple had established a price point, and obviously these guys want to milk as much as they can from the early adopters, and they felt like, well, Apple's selling millions of these things at this price point, we'll do the same thing. But now what they've found themselves, of course, is that all of these Android devices, all of the HP WebOS, the touchpad, the RIM playbook, whatever it is, whatever these non-iPad tablets are, they're not selling. So I think the first step that needs to occur here for this market to take off as a market of its own is that the non-Apple players need to do to the iPad what the PC did to the to the Mac, which is to make it the most expensive option. And this lowering the prices across the board is what makes the most sense for these other tablets. Because at the end of the day, regardless of how you feel about these different companies or the platforms, the truth is the iPad is by far the best tablet. And it doesn't always have to do with the hardware, or the specs, or whatever. It's that whole surrounding ecosystem thing. It's the iTunes Store and all the content you can get there, and iTunes U, and the audiobooks, and the App Store, and all that stuff. I mean, that stuff on Apple is only 10 times better, at least, than anything anywhere else so far. Maybe Amazon will change that when they come out with their own.
We're seeing some tablets come out that are some no-name companies for $199, but that's not going to help the market.
But what that should do is drag the non-iPad tablets down a little bit, right? That there needs to be a PC-like market for tablets where they're all at different price points, and you get what you pay for.
I don't know. I'm just surprised at this because I honestly thought that $299 would be the price point for some of these devices.
I did too.
And that's a great price point. That's a price point that you would say, well, you know what? I could buy one.
$500 for 16 gigabytes of RAM. What are you kidding me?
And
I mean, like and then you go up. The only difference between a 16 gig iPad and a 32 gig iPad is the memory, and it's $100 more. Really, for something that must cost them $5 or $6. You know, I just thought that was the craziest thing, and yet, you know, they've kind of established this as the norm.
But see, I bought the iPad, and the iPad, somebody brought it up in chat, is the ecosystem. You're buying because it's already put in place, right? The apps are there, and you know what you're getting. And I really don't consider the iPad a tablet. It's not competing with these guys. The iPad, for me, it's everybody's competing with the iPad.
With
the
what
iPad,
guys? Like, who are you talking? Like, it's not competing with.
Let's compare it to the Motorola Zoom, right? When that device came out, they said, "Oh, well, this is going to be it. You know, this is it." They did the whole thing at CES. They said, this is the device that's going to be great for Android, and you're going to be able to do this with Honeycomb. And it was a giant flop. They did the same with the Playbook, a giant flop. Why is the iPad so successful? Because it's the environment of the iPad. Yeah. And it's a pre-existing environment. People know what they're getting.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, one of the big criticisms I had of the iPad when it first came out, even before it came out, was simply that it was in many ways a kind of a bald-faced move on Apple's part to seize on the success of this infrastructure and say, look, we only make money on hardware. What else could we sell people that would let them keep buying stuff from the store?
Yeah.
And, you know, it was kind of the natural next step. I really didn't expect it to be as popular as it was. I thought the price was too expensive, and yet people are, you know, buying them at this price, so wrong on both counts. But I do believe, and I still believe, and I think that now that we're seeing some price movement finally, that these other companies have to sell their machines for less. I'm sorry, as good as a Zoom may be, or a RIM Playbook, or an HP touchpad, whatever, it's not as good. So it can't cost as much. It just can't. You're not getting as much.
And one major thing, other than let's forget about the ecosystem, is it's the battery life. A lot of these devices can't do 7, 8, 9 hours, and it's. For the price, for $500, for $600, for $700, it better be better or at the level of the iPad. And these devices are coming short, and I can't tell you what the best Android tablet is right now. I can't.
I can't tell you how many times technology has been disappointing to me, but you know, WebOS, for example, is something beautiful to look at. The first time I actually got to play with one of those phones, when the first ones came out back when they were still Palm, the performance was so awful that it just completely ruined it. And I was glad I hadn't bought one, because I was going to buy one sight unseen, because it just looked so beautiful. It seemed like they were really onto something. And I don't know that that's the case. In fact, I'm positive that's not the case with the touchpad. It's not that. It's just, you know, you look at this HP touchpad thing and you think this looks like an iPad. It has an HP logo. You know, it docks horizontally instead of in portrait mode. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, it's a beautiful device.
It's beautiful looking, but you know, what is I don't understand the market for something that looks just like a thing but is not that thing. Yeah. You know, people want that thing. They don't want something that looks just like it. We don't want the knockoff bag. We want the real one. You know, I just don't. You need to differentiate in some way, and the key way, unfortunately, for these guys, especially when they don't offer as much as Apple does across the board.
But, you know, here's the thing, though, Paul. Who's the market for this device? Who are they aiming this to?
I think there's a case to be made that this is turning into a mainstream computing market. And I use my mother as the typical example, or grandmother, whatever. Her computing needs are not my computing needs, right? As a writer, I need a full machine with a keyboard and a big screen, and I need to do all this stuff. You know, you do a lot of video work, you need the same needs. My mother answers very occasional emails, browses the web, and by the way, that might be it. You know, there are things that normal people would enjoy, whether there's particular apps or podcasts or audiobooks or whatever it is. You know, people are into different things. They're all available on the iPad.
But see, here you said something really. It's exactly what people are using. They're doing very simple tasks on this thing. You're not going to see someone writing a book, you know, typing up a book. You're not going to see heavy usage of these devices, or if you are, people are doing it, they're going to be disappointed. But for $500, right?
That's going to change. That is going to change.
That is going to change, absolutely. But for $500, $600, $700, Does it
Well,
make sense to buy this device?
for that much money, you mean? Instead of a netbook or something
Or
that
even
would be less
even
expensive.
even a great laptop. You could get a great laptop for that price.
You know, I think for a lot of these people, it still does make sense because there is a complexity to a computer operating system, and I don't just mean Windows. I mean Mac OS 10, same thing. That is just needless to people. You know, for people, they don't understand it, they don't want it. It just gets in the way, and I think people get frustrated by that stuff. And that, yeah, I mean, something simpler is in order. I mean, I don't believe that the UIs on the iPad are perfect or anything, certainly, or these other devices, but they do offer a simpler view to the things that really do matter to them. And I think there's value in that. I mean, I don't want to get too far into the whole, you know, that notion that design is partly about what you leave out, not just what you put in. But there's some truth to that, you know, and I think there'll always be people like us who need more and could never use these things. I don't remember when this was, but I went to some Microsoft press event where some guy methodically took out of his bag an iPad in a case, a stand dock thing, and then a Bluetooth keyboard. And then he proceeded to use this thing as if, you know, it's like, oh, that's way more convenient than bringing a laptop.
So he spent $500 for the iPad at least. He spent another $100 for the keyboard. He spent about $50 for the dock. So he spent about $700.
Well, let's imagine you're a typical, like just a blogger. Like it doesn't matter what you blog about, but we're in the tech business. Let's say it's tech stuff. You want to blog about technology. It is ponderous on today's iPad to have a web browser where you have some, you know, thing open that you're reading, and then have some word processor open that you're also doing. Yeah. How do you switch between those things quickly and easily?
Yeah, exactly. You know? Yeah, it's
stupid. I mean, I'm not saying you can't do it.
You can.
It's stupid. Well, you basically can.
Well, we said it last week. I think there's going to be a whole generation of kids coming up, and they don't know what it's like to type on a keyboard. They're going to be typing on glass or metal.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, you know, I've had, listen, so many eye-opening experiences thanks to the iPad. I mean, I would stay with friends when I went up to Seattle. They both have iPads. You know, I sat there and watched my friend's wife tap away on a key on the iPad as if it were a keyboard. I mean, touch typing with two hands, going nuts on this thing. And I'm thinking to myself, I honestly did not think this was even possible. I mean, it's amazing. I couldn't. It was like you couldn't stop looking at it. Like she was typing a fairly legitimate, you know, document of some kind or an email or whatever.
Oh, people get used to it. I guess it's, you know, adapting and curving the way you're typing for whatever device. You know, I did the worst thing ever, and I bought a gaming keyboard. And when I went back and I started typing again, you know, writing stuff for the website, I had a difficult time adjusting to the keyboard, and my typing actually slowed down because I went to this bulky big keyboard with giant spaced out keys. And when I went to a regular key, I had a lot of problems going back, and it just takes time, and people evolve and they get used to it, and they just don't know.
Right.
They're just adapting.
You know, the little thumb keyboards that we had to use before to type text messages and stuff. There are people who can rifle through those things. You know, you do adapt, and of course, the younger you are, the better off you are to adapt for those kind of things. I'm not gonna write my next book on an iPad or any kind of glass keyboard ever, of course, but it doesn't matter. It's, you know, the point isn't that these things take over. The point is that, you know, the good ideas from the iPad and the other tablets need to come down to the PC or up to the PC. And, you know, some of the capabilities of PCs need to move down to the iPad too. And then, I don't know, we meet in the middle somewhere. And eventually we're attaching an iPad to a real laptop keyboard, and it's a real computer then.
I think the greatest thing would be if we wrote Windows 8 secrets all done on an iPad. That would be the...
yeah, my advance will be so meager that wouldn't make any sense at all. But...
take you 3 times as long to type it, but
just to have it in the end of the book, you know, this book typed entirely on an iPad.
You know, another interesting thing that the tablets might take over and it might help the sales is how it is hurting a lot of these portable gaming devices. We just saw the Nintendo 3DS, which people were praising. They were saying, "Oh wow, this is going to be great. It's 3D," which maybe I'm one of the few people that does not get 3D. They're slashing prices on this device because they're saying sales are not where it was and where it should be for a handheld gaming device. And
well, except for one thing. I mean, I don't think this should have been that surprising.
no, I'm not surprised either. But do you feel that? I think to many people they are surprised. You know, when Nintendo releases a device like this, a Nintendo DS is one of the best-selling.
Except Nintendo, like Nokia and like RIM before it, has been living off of its established name for a little too long. I think the world has moved on and they have not been paying attention. Gaming machines are not these dedicated devices anymore. Sorry.
But even what is it? The Veer now? Sony's putting out
the Vita or whatever.
The Vita,
the
whatever.
PSP.
Yeah, the new PSP.
Well, did you hear? So that was delayed. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yeah, till then we're not getting in 2011.
Yep. So I think the time has passed. I'm sorry. You know, with the 3DS specifically, I don't know if did I ever tell you my 3DS story?
No, please tell me.
So I bought one, and I bought 4 games, and it arrived. And I took 2 of the games out of the box. I took the thing out of the box. I looked at it, and I thought to myself, this is completely unimpressive. I couldn't care less about this. But maybe my kids will like this. So I put it out in the den, and I said, here's this thing. It was it was a caution in there about the 3D effect in small kids' eyes, and I didn't want my kids to hurt their eyes. So I asked them if they would simply there's a slider, you can turn it down to the lowest possible 3D
well, we
effect.
had that when I was a kid with the Game Boy. They said it's not good for kids' eyes, so my mother never bought me a Game Boy.
Oh, okay. So, well, the early Game Boys probably had a flickering issue. It was probably like a very bad issue. But I find the 3D and the 3DS to be disconcerting. I don't like it. It's not clear. It works, and you have to be right on top of it. But I just don't like it. Anyway, my kids used this thing for a couple of days. I left the other 2 games in the box on reserve, thinking if they love this thing, they'll start clamoring for more games. But what happened with it very quickly, much more quickly than with the Wii and much more quickly than with the Kinect, is they simply forgot about it and dropped it and stopped using it. And so at some point, I actually went to my kids and I said, listen, I'm going to return this thing unless you can, express otherwise, I should do otherwise. And they were like, yeah, I don't care. I returned it.
Yeah. It just shows
I don't usually do that with electronics. You know, I don't buy something so I can test it, write about it, and then return it. I never do that. But the 3DS was so unexceptional and so pointless in this age of iPod touches and iPads. It just didn't. The types of games my kids now expect and want to play are those touchscreen games.
Really, that they want to play.
Yeah, with the understanding that they're not. That type of interface is not perfect for everything, right? One of the great things about this Sony Vita thing or whatever it's called is that it will actually function like a video game controller. It will have the 2 the 2 hat sticks, whatever, I don't know what they're called. Yeah. So you could actually do a 3D shooter on this thing and it would work. It would actually be easy to control. I've been looking for a machine like that for years and years, a portable machine. But now that it's coming,
see that's the problem.
It's too late. If you could have come out, I don't know why the first PlayStation Portable didn't have that, but if you could have come out with this thing even 3 years ago, it would have made a difference. I just think that the time it's just passed.
Well, I think what's going to be a selling point to this device is initially they had said that it was going to be $249, and now they're saying, well, it's going to be $300. So it's starting to inch its way up, but they need to keep the price point extremely low for this device, because if you're going to pay $400 for a device like this, you know what?
I mentioned RIM and Nokia earlier. We tend to think of these companies as companies on the decline that are circling the drain. I can assure you that within a year or two, we're going to think of, if not sooner, Nintendo and Sony both as that same kind of company. And I'm surprised we're not talking about this yet, because these guys, they had it, and they don't. It's like they don't see how the market's going. And I'm sorry, you can only live on your good name for so long if you're not doing something to lead in the industry. And I just don't see either of them making it.
Well, I honestly, I think Sony's been on the decline for the last decade. They've been.
It's like watching someone die slowly. It's terrible. Yeah.
I haven't bought it. First of all, I don't think I've ever owned a Sony TV. So let's even go back to its original.
By the way, they're beautiful. It's not. They make great stuff. They have high end stuff. That's very expensive and very nice. But yeah, I haven't either.
I mean, I'm on their website right now. I've never bought a Sony laptop because it's way too expensive. Same with their desktops. I have a PlayStation 3, and I think it's one of the biggest flops of all time. If it wasn't for the if it wasn't for the Blu-ray player, nobody would have bought this thing. It's way too expensive, and it has no multimedia support compared to what the Xbox is able to do. Camcorder's okay, but who's buying a camcorder? Tablets, they have a couple tablets that they just released. Did you see this one, the dual screen one?
Yep, that's such a...
You know what it looks like to me? It looks like these were designs they had about 15 years ago. Yeah. When PC World and CNET would do how would they say? They would say the device of the future.
Computing of the future.
Computing of the future. This device is just like that.
It's hokey.
It is.
Just hokey.
I don't know who's going to buy this thing. I mean, and they're expensive. They're really expensive.
No, this is the company that squandered the MP3 era when they had those terrible devices that wouldn't play MP3s and would only play their own like 8-track format stuff. They've just blown it at every step of the way, and they've done everything they can to fail. I feel bad because Sony, still in my head, I associate it with some form of quality. But yeah, the same thing. The laptops are nice, but they're really expensive. The TVs are nice, but they're really expensive. And
I worked for a Japanese company a couple of years ago. I did their IT, and the CEO's brother was, or I don't know if he still is, but at the time he was a VP at Sony, Sony Japan, and he gave his son wanted an iPod. This is quite a few years ago. His son wanted the iPod really bad, and he didn't get him the iPod. He gave him the Sony device because he works at Sony, and that's he didn't feel it would be right to give the kid an iPod when he's the VP of Sony.
Yep.
He went to use it, and the kid just hated it. And he goes, I don't understand what's wrong with you. An iPod, an MP3 player is an MP3 player. What's the difference? You're going to listen to music. He used the device himself, and he said, we have to do something because this is awful.
Yeah.
The VP hated it himself. I mean...
what's funny about this is if you go to, and I haven't done this, but I guarantee you that they still sell new Sony, MP3 players of some kind.
I'm at their
Walkman
website now.
MP3 players or whatever. They do.
Yeah, they have. I'm at the Sony shop. They actually have a tape cassette player.
Awesome.
The Sony tape radio Walkman. It's $14.
Oh, that's great. Well,
I can't believe they're still selling that. Oh, they have a couple of them. Holy crap! They have one. They have one that's $40. This is unreal.
Yeah,
but they have CD players.
They've just blown it.
How do you compete with that though? Who's competing with the iPhone, the iPod in that market? I mean,
honestly, Nintendo, for example. If I were running the show at Nintendo, I would ask around and say, what really are our best assets? And Nintendo's best assets as a game company are the games, not the consoles. It's the games. They need to be porting their stuff to other platforms. Everyone should be doing this. I get the notion of these exclusive titles and everything, but at some point you need to make that stuff available elsewhere.
Oh, you mean the games?
Yeah, the actual games.
Okay, so Mario.
Where it makes sense.
So Mario would be on, the Xbox.
Absolutely, and on the iPhone, and all these devices that people are actually buying. You need to follow the market.
Well, Sega was one of the first to do that, right? Because Sega stopped creating its own hardware and started licensing.
Yeah, so they abandoned the hardware market. I'm not saying it's time for Sony or Nintendo to abandon hardware per se. I mean, I think there's certainly Nintendo has innovated with video game hardware in the living room and all that stuff, and the Kinect wouldn't exist without it. There's no doubt about that. So there's probably some room for them to continue with that. I just think that they need to also start thinking about this other stuff. When you see that everyone is going to the iPod, the response isn't to put out these terrible Walkman branded players with your own stupid store that nobody cares about and just kind of beat this thing to death. It just doesn't make sense.
I don't know. I don't know if they'll ever get it, and I think you're right with that. I think they're going to continue on, and eventually they're going to start hemorrhaging so much money where they're going to kill the entire platform and say, "Oh, this isn't working out for us."
Maybe someday there will be a future dedicated portable video game, handheld machine that makes sense. I just don't see it.
Sony tried it. Sony tried it with the Xperia, the new one that was a PlayStation certified phone, and they botched that too. I mean, in such
hear nothing about it,
because it's an awful device. It's just Android with a couple games.
Well, so I don't know anything about it. I would assume they have some kind of GPU in there that makes some kind of sense, and who knows. And I do like the notion of an Android device or whatever device that has a PlayStation style controller built into it, right? That is absolutely a missing piece.
Yeah.
In the iPod Touch, iPhone world. If you want to, there are certain games you just can't play on a touch screen. Types of games.
No, it's difficult. You're absolutely right.
So that should be addressed, but. I mean, Sony could come out with a clip-on controller for an iPod Touch and for an iPad, and then put all their games on those platforms, and they would probably do pretty good with that. Not that it would replace the PSP from a volume or money or revenue standpoint, whatever. But you need to kind of accept where the world's going and just run with it.
I am hoping at one point, as I drop my pen, I'm hoping that I don't know. They kind of, and it's the same thing. They would have released this the new Vita. What is it called? The Vita?
I think it's Vita, but
I was hoping they would have released that and it would have just been a full-fledged Android phone, and it would have had everything you wanted with that, and you could make phone calls and you could do all of that, and it would be an all-in-one device.
Even when that device came out, the first one, the PSP, that is, they had this hokey, proprietary, typical Sony disc-based format that didn't work with anything else. It was the only way you could buy games. They don't go with anything industry standard. They don't have any electronic way to buy these games, which is the right way to do it. And so here we are with the second, we're moving on to the second gen. Now, they finally got rid of that thing. They don't have, I don't remember what they're called, but those little game discs they had. But, they're just hopelessly behind. I mean, you can't launch any mobile platform today without a full market ready to go. It has to have all that stuff. And if you don't have it, I'm sorry, you can only port Zelda to so many different. I mean, it's just,
exactly.
Enough already.
At the end of our show, which is we're approaching it now, we're going to do something. We're going to do a Q&A where viewers could ask Paul a question or me a question regarding a certain topic, and as long as it has to do with tech, and not what you had for dinner. The
topic is betting.
Yeah. What do you think of the OTB, Paul?
Let me tell you something.
Somebody, I got a message here, and you could message us in the chat room on Twitter or on Facebook. Mm-hmm. They want to know, is this going to save Nokia in the U.S.? The deal that they have with Microsoft, where they're going to put the Windows Phone OS on the phone, is this going to save Nokia in the States, or is this going to help Microsoft more?
Right. Yeah. Nokia has no presence in the United States. So I actually think from the U.S. perspective, this is going to be a big deal for Nokia. I think from Nokia's perspective, the bigger deal for them is actually going to be, I don't want to call them third world markets, but emerging markets, right? Mm-hmm. That their goal really is to sell lower end phones in volume to these emerging markets, Africa, Southeast Asia, India, wherever, Russia. I don't think Nokia is ever going to be dominant in the U.S. I mean, even at the height of their popularity here, they weren't really that big. But I think Windows Phone will put them back on the map here, and I think that's great. And I think when people see those phones, they're going to be blown away by the quality of them, and especially by the quality of the camera, which is, I think, the missing piece.
You're talking about the build quality of the device.
Yes, the build quality, and then the quality of the camera, the physical camera that's built in, very high quality on the Nokia thing. So, we don't, as Americans, understand how big Nokia is in the world.
Oh, it's humongous. Yeah.
Yeah, it's there's almost nothing like it. I mean, other than maybe Apple, from a sheer presence perspective. But when you go to countries in Europe, especially, you see Nokia everywhere.
Why do they have that dominance? I mean, was it? I remember I had a couple friends, and they would go to Greece every summer, and they would always have those little brick Nokias, and they would all play Snake on that thing, and they thought it was the greatest thing. And they said everybody in Europe has a Nokia. There's no other phone that you get.
And they still do in some ways. Well, they have iPhones now.
I mean, was it because it was put in place from the beginning that, okay, Nokia is the brand you buy, or have they been...
I can only speculate. When I kind of came of age with computers, I was a big Amiga fan. And the big thing about the Amiga was always very popular in Europe. And it was never popular here. And it may be a societal thing, some small, strange difference between Western Europe and the United States. I don't know. Differences in the way things are sold and what the stores are like. And I can't really speculate. Or I can't speculate. I can only speculate. Nokia is, of course, a European company. So maybe that plays into that. I don't know, but Nokia is a big deal in Asia too. So
Yeah.
why is that? I don't know.
I don't know. I hope that that's a great phone, and I think it will be because
I think so too.
I don't know if those mock-ups, how accurate those mock-ups are that they're putting all over the internet, but
they're very accurate.
yeah. Actually, no, I have another question here. Chris Obai, I may be butchering that name in the chat room, is wondering if the text-to-speech about the text-to-speech compatibility in Mango. Is it English only, or can you switch languages?
I actually don't know.
That's a very good question.
I've not tried that, so I'm almost tempted to do it now. Other than that, it would distort the microphone. I don't know. I guess is all I can say. One of the big advantages with Mango compared to the previous version is that they support more languages, but I don't know if that extends to the text-to-speech stuff. One of the big problems with Windows Phone is that many of its best features are not available in many European markets, and that's confusing and dumb, and that may fall into that. So all I can say is I'll look at that, and hopefully I can write something about that whenever I do review.
Yeah, that is interesting, actually. I wonder how they're going to do that. Do you know how they're going to market this overseas with the Nokia deal? Is Nokia fully going to Windows overseas as well? Or I know they said they're going to still support.
They've still got more Symbian phones coming out, so there's going to be a combination of that. But I think that is to serve those markets where Symbian is still an established thing and a big deal, and there are still customers that want that stuff. But I think that will be based on how quickly Symbian falls off the map, which I think is actually
how does this affect the Intel thing? Are we going to see an Amigo device?
Oh, I don't ever expect to see Amigo device.
I mean, that was going to be the next thing, right? They were going to ditch Symbian and go to Migo.
Intel has been very successful at one thing, much like Microsoft, and that one thing is making microprocessors for traditional computers. They've never done well with software. They've never done well, trying to start these other markets and so forth. So I don't think Migo has any future.
Yeah. Excellent. I think that about wraps it up. It's already been an hour, 7 minutes.
Okay.
That went by fast. Go to our website, guysfromqueens.com. Also go to the streaming site, gfqlive.tv. You could go to Paul's website, winsupersite.com. Unbelievable article on the Roku. Very detailed review. I had to do a video review of this device, just trying to figure out how to get it into the computer without messing up my entire setup here. But when I do that, I'm going to have a review. And I appreciate Paul coming back on to the show, even though I had to switch the day.
I'm sorry about that.
No, it's fine. It actually, and I was talking before we went on the air, it worked out because I was off that day and I didn't have any other show. I was able to tinker with the video settings, and we have upped our video quality to 480p now.
Yep.
And I don't know what that means to our viewers. I don't even think they care because nobody watches. They just listen.
Well, it means I'm going to have to start shaving.
Yeah.
I normally would have done that. I was only at this camp for 3 days. I feel like I've been at military boot camp for a month.
Did you come back? You were all shaken up.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm dreaming about like these bizarre Objective-C things and these weird Xcode connections that you make between objects and code, and I
don't know. I could never do that. What was like the living arrangement? Were you in a hotel? Were you
No. It was a campground basically. We were in like cabins, I guess, individual cabins, literally in the middle of the deep woods.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was neat. I haven't had a camping experience like that since I was a kid, but that wasn't really part of the point is to get you away from your normal schedule and vibe and everything, and really immerse you in this thing, which is very effective as a teaching strategy. But it was it's just funny. I can't remember now if I mentioned this, but they had zip lines. Did I tell you about the zip lines?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. So there was this bizarre kind of thing going on the side where someone would scream near you and go flying by in a line as you were coding, and it's like after a while it just became an accepted part.
Did you go on the zip line?
No, I didn't get to. I wanted to, but I couldn't fit it into the schedule.
That's sad. I've done a zip line once in the Mayan jungle in Mexico.
Oh, that's awesome.
The zip line thing was great. The fact that it was a 6-hour ordeal.
Yeah, it can be an all-day
deal.
Yeah.
We weren't happy being two New Yorkers, and it was pouring rain.
Because you have to hike in and
Yeah.
hike up, and you obviously have to start from some point that's way the heck up there.
I've told this story a couple times on the air, my other show, the Andrew Zarian Show, which is following us at 8 p.m. I thought I was going to die on that trip, and I really was prepared never to come back. They took us in this van. We were on a cruise. They put us in this van, and the van looks like it's like a 1982 Chevy van that's been painted like 6 different colors. There's no seating. There's no seats. We're all sitting in the back of the van on the floor.
Right.
They take us into like this dirt road area. They're going into the jungle. It's us, this older Indian couple, and like a bunch of tourists from the Midwest. The tourists from the Midwest are extremely happy. They're having a great time. They're so excited to be there. The Indian couple and Jess and I look at each other, and we gave each other the same look saying, we may not come back. We're going to die together. They take us to this off-road area. There's security everywhere, but like it's so shady where they took us. They go, okay, get out. We all get out. We're walking in line. They go, okay, now this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And they're walking us in the middle of the middle of the forest. They go, okay, now we're going to take you into a cave. They take us into a cave, and they tell us there's this shaman there, and they're going to do a Mayan prayer. The shaman is wearing a New York Mets shirt and a hat that says, I love Los Angeles. I'm like, well, that's a giant contradiction. So he's doing this shaman prayer. Who knows what he's saying? He could just be saying, you people are dummies. I'm getting your money right now. Mm-hmm. And then they take us up to the hill. They go, okay, now you're going to zip line. The zip line doesn't look safe enough for me. I go, no, it's okay. I'll walk. And they go, no, there's no way of walking. You have no choice. You have to zip line to the other side.
Yep.
I do the zip line. Okay, fine. I dealt with that. Now my OCD, my panic disorder is kicking in. They take us into another cave, and they tell us to swim to the other side. I could swim, but I'm not a great swimmer.
Right.
I said, I could do this. Fine. I'm going to have a good time. My wife is having a great time. I'm miserable. Everybody's swimming. I decide I'm going to swim. I could do this. Halfway through, I realize I'm not that great of a swimmer. And I start like doggy paddling like I'm some 4-year-old, and I'm drowning. I'm sinking to the bottom. I finally grab onto a piece of rock, and I just stood there, and I was like, are you coming? I'm like, you got to give me a minute. And I slowly made it to the other side.
On a zip line trip, like that's not the way I would picture dying.
No. I thought I was going to die. And the best part was they're cooking us a traditional Mayan meal in the forest with nothing, just rainwater.
Right.
I don't eat it. And they're petting the dogs, like the stray dogs. And then they're like making like the tortillas and petting the dog. And I'm thinking, I'm like, this would not work in the States.
Right.
I mean, I'm all for understanding other cultures, but I mean, there's a certain level of petting a stray dog and feeding them the food that you're just making us, and then giving it to us. So I totally had a miserable time, and I thought I was going to die. And that was the last time I went away.
I still want to do the zip line, but I see what you're saying.
Well, this took a whole different turn, but the zip line wasn't that bad. I could deal with the zip line.
Right.
We were just wrapping it up, so I'll repeat it again. Go to our website, guysfromqueens.com. Also go to our streaming site, gfqlive.tv. We're following this show today on Thursday, the Andrew Zarian Show at 8 p.m. East. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I know you had a busy day. You've been doing broadcasting for about 7 hours now. Yeah. So I think you're going to get a good rest after this.
Yeah, my wife is waiting on me to eat.
Okay.
So I've seen her come by a couple times.
You should just signal. Just please tell me. And we'll see you all next week on What the Tech. Good night, everybody.